Golden State Media Concepts Baseball Podcast. We cover everything Major League, from spring training to the World Series. We've got your favorite club covered, from New York to Boston to LA. This is the Golden State Media Concepts Baseball Podcast.
It is the weekend. We are in the home stretch of the MLB season. I'm glad you're able to join me here on the GSMC Baseball Podcast on the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Collin Manley, bringing you another episode, getting you caught up on everything going on around the MLB. Yeah, the final stretch, the final series, they are right in front of us. This season went so fast, so incredibly fast. It's definitely been crazy. 60 games, we knew it was going to be short, obviously, compared to what a normal season is, but it just felt like it was by in a breeze. And there's a lot of stuff that has been going on in the season that we need to talk about. So I want to make sure that we're caught up. The podcast, it's going to be a great one. We're going to get you updated on news and noise, all those injury informations around the league, along with any other little things that we need to dive into. I want to talk about Albert Pujols. Yeah, this guy just made a major move in his career statistics, and I just want to talk about where he's at kind of everywhere and what we potentially could have looking forward with him. I want to make sure that we take a dive into the playoff picture. What do we have? What teams have clinched? What teams are on the verge? What it looks like. Well, we're going to have 16 teams going into the 2020 postseason. And lastly, I want to talk about some teams for next year. Yeah, I got a few teams that I want to talk about, at least for next year, that we know their season's pretty much done. But if they can fix something, we might be talking about a turnaround season for them. But we're going to start things off with news and noise around the league, starting off with my favorite team, the Boston Red Sox. Well, Alex Verdugo, the one trade piece that we got back that's just been showing, hey, it was worth trading Mookie Betts, even though I'm so sad we still traded him. But hey, Verdugo has been solid. Well, he had to exit Boston's game against the Yankees at Fenway Park on Friday in the fourth inning with some hamstring tightness. He was removed from the contest as a precaution after grabbing his left hamstring while running to second base in the third inning. He has been awesome for the Red Sox. That is just putting it as nicely as I possibly can. Awesome for a season that has been rough for the Red Sox fans, period. Hitting .328 with 6 home runs in 48 games. Just be smart with him, Boston. We don't need to rush him back in any way, shape, or form. Let's make sure that he is healthy coming into next season. Don't do anything stupid. Ryan Braun with the Brewers. Well, they were playing their final home series of 2020. The veteran Braun, he had to leave early with what was considered to be some back tightness. At least that's what on the broadcast they were saying. He was kind of struggling to run at first base. He had a pair of singles. He committed an error as a result, trying to throw to second base. It was a little bit of a struggle for Braun, that's for sure. He has been dealing with a lot of different injuries as of recent. He's definitely had a little bit of injury problems this year. Only 30 games in the first 50 so far for the Brewers. Hitting okay for the team. He was in a 13-32 stretch in September, included his 350th home run on Wednesday, but we'll see. We're waiting for more information on that. I imagine with some back issues, he's going to be a little day-to-day, but the Brewers are kind of running out of games. They need as many of their top guys out there as they can get, so we'll see if he will be trying to play through some stuff, what's going to really happen there. Jose Quintana for the Cubs is scheduled to throw in a simulated game on Saturday, according to manager David Ross. Ross said that if it goes well, the left-hander could be activated off the 10-day IL soon after, would being the big words there. So Quintana, if he has a good bullpen sesh today as of this recording on Saturday, looks like he'll be back for the Cubs sooner than later. For the Mets, oh man, you never want to see a guy have another great season like Jacob deGrom exit a start, but that's what happened against the Phillies at Citizens Bank Park after 3 innings on Wednesday. He was experiencing some right hamstring spasms. On Thursday, manager Luis Rojas said DeGrom threw without any issues, while the two-time Cy Young Award winner is considered day-to-day. Optimism that he's going to be able to make his next start on schedule. And while it's a long shot as well for the Mets, that's another team that's not technically out of it when it comes to the playoffs yet. So when you got a top-notch two-time Cy Young Award winner, being able to say, yeah, we're thinking he's going to play in the next start is great, great, great news for the Mets. Austin Meadows for the Tampa Bay Rays, day after leaving in their win over the Orioles in the opener of a 7-inning doubleheader at Camden Yards in the third inning. He was placed on the 10-day IL with what was called a left oblique strain. The Rays, I don't consider the Yankees to be catching the Rays. Obviously, 3.5 games in a 9-game stretch, that's most likely not going to happen. But the Rays are still fighting off the White Sox and Oakland for the top spot in the American League. White Sox half game back, Oakland 1.5. So any injury news for them is scary bad news. You don't want to be seeing anything for them holding on tight to that top spot. So we'll see what happens there moving forward. For the Giants, Mike Yastrzemski, who departed the 6-4 comeback win against the Mariners at Oracle Park on Thursday in the second inning, he left with a right calf strain, is listed as day-to-day. Manager Gabe Kapler said Yastrzemski felt some discomfort during his lone at-bat in the afternoon against the Mariners. Left-hander Nick Margevicius in the top of the first that was against him, which ended with a strikeout, so you could tell that something was bothering him. There was a little discomfort going on, so he exited that game. We'll see. He seems to be day-to-day at the moment. For the Twins, well, the Twins reinstated Mitch Garver from the IL and placed Jake Odorizzi on the 10-day IL on Friday. Garver, who missed the last 27 games with a low-grade intercostal strain. Yeah, low-grade intercostal strain. Good thing I'm not a doctor. I don't know what all these things are sometimes. Is hitting 154, 8 for 52 with 1 home run and 2 RBIs, 7 runs scored and 7 walks in 17 games for the Twins this season. He is someone that they're going to be happy to have back, but you just hope that he's going to be more of what he was. I mean, if this injury, he's coming back clean, you just never know. It's late in the season. It's going to be hard for some of these players to really get a rhythm, is one of my major concerns if you haven't been playing for a stretch. So we'll see for sure if these guys can get back into it, because when you're going in the first round of the playoffs, a 3-game series, anything can happen in a 3-game series. Odorizzi, he's dealing with a blister on his right middle finger. Right-hander had to exit Wednesday's game, his first start back from the IL after being hit by a comebacker in August due to this issue. Moving on to the St. Louis Cardinals, Dakota Hudson, after feeling some tightness in his elbow that couldn't be ignored in Thursday's 5-1 loss to the Pirates, Hudson was placed on the 10-day IL with a right forearm strain. This looks like it's going to be ending his season for the Cardinals, most likely not seeing him at all moving forward. The Phillies, lots and lots and lots of news for the Phillies. They placed Jake Arrieta on the 10-day IL Wednesday with a strained right hamstring, and an MRI revealed a grade 1 strain. Joe Girardi said Thursday that the veteran right-hander will not return during the regular season. The hope is to get him back for the playoffs. Just wishful thinking for the regular season. We're going to see where this goes, kind of paraphrasing what Girardi was talking about. They're optimistic, hopefully, that he'll be able to come back, be a help in the postseason. Spencer Howard is on the 10-day IL due to a stiff right shoulder. He may begin a light throwing program shortly, depending on how he felt. The first day he'll be eligible to come off the IL is Wednesday, but unless he begins throwing soon, he won't be ready in time to pitch again in the regular season as well. JT Realmuto, with a strained left hip flexor, was planning on trying some light running on the field before Thursday's game. Remains unclear whether he's going to be able to return fully during the weekend series against the Blue Jays. And then Jay Bruce also planned on doing some light running on Thursday. The club is hopeful he'll be back in the lineup over the next couple days. Lastly, Rhys Hoskins for the Phillies might need Tommy John surgery in the offseason. Still hopes to play this year. He will treat the strained ulnar collateral ligament in his left arm for the next several days, then try to swing a bat a couple days before he's eligible to be activated from the 10-day IL on September 23rd. The Astros needing as much help as they can get in the pitching department. Well, they're hopeful that they can get Verlander on the mound for one start near the end of the regular season and then have him ready for a potential playoff series. That would be a big thing to get back. The righty's physical response after throwing 75 pitches on Wednesday determined the next step forward, so we'll see what the Astros' real plan is when they pencil in him for starting. Up in the air, but they're hopeful that they can get him back soon, so that way the postseason, he'll at least have one start underneath his belt. Chris Davinsky underwent a procedure on his right elbow Tuesday to have a bone spur removed. This came from general manager James Click. He announced that on Wednesday. The recovery time for Davinsky is expected to be about 4 months, so obviously his time for the season all done. And last for the Astros, Brad Peacock was placed on the 10-day IL on Friday. Dusty Baker said Peacock's injury is the same shoulder discomfort that has limited him to 3 games on the mound this year. He has been kind of a guy in their pitching staff for a long time, but it's looking like he will not be seen at all in the postseason, which is, again, bummer pitching news when it comes to the Astros. Then the Dodgers, well, Walker Buehler, he threw a 6-inning simulated game at the club's alternate training site on Monday with his index finger blister covered. He will have another later in the week. Will be activated to make one final big league start next week to prepare for the postseason. So the Dodgers treating him the same as Verlander for the Tigers, just trying to get these guys at least one game, a little bit of comfort level before they move into the postseason. Also for the Dodgers, Caleb Ferguson will undergo Tommy John surgery ending his season. Dave Roberts said Thursday the Dodgers placed the left-hander in the 10-day IL Wednesday after he injured his left elbow Tuesday night. So that's going to be it for most of our injury news. It's going to get interesting. These injuries, while the list was shorter, I'm very curious to see how a lot of teams are going to handle things moving forward. Every single person, at least in the playoff hunt, that's going to be added to the IL, you're going to have to start considering their season to be done. Not just their season, but postseason as well. So we might see guys starting to play through some stuff, some less news when it comes to players going to IL or any injury reports getting to be major. But at the same time, we'll see about some of these pitchers coming back. In a tight game, or tight finish to the season, I should say, when we're getting very close to the end, there's probably going to be a lot of players that teams are hoping to get at least some sort of regular play, whether it be fielding, at-bats, pitching, whatever. That some of these games might get interesting at the end. You got to have your best team going in. I love the idea that we're throwing in this 3-game series. The excitement from a wild card game where it's one game, win and move on, was very, very, very fun. Stretching it out to 3 games obviously gives teams a little bit more hope that they could do something. And so with this idea, a lot of these teams are going to be trying to get as many players ready as possible. So that way, they could pull off a 3-game series. 2 games is not a crazy thing to ask anybody. Baseball is that weird sport. We've known this. We've seen this. It's been happening for years. Anything can happen in the baseball postseason. No matter how good you were in the regular season, your great record doesn't really always mean something. It's the team that gets hot hitting, hot pitching, something that just clicks towards the end of the season, and we see them carry. I mean, look at last year. That Nationals team was just clicking at the end of the year, and they mowed right along. Makes baseball postseason, in my honest opinion, baseball postseason is the best one across the sports, just because of you don't know who is going to come out on top. Some other sports can get to be a little more predictable. You know who your favorites are. Anything can happen in baseball. That's why I love this postseason. So that's going to be it for our news and noise around the league, getting you caught up on all 30 MLB teams. There was, big injury news. Big injury news to talk about. When we come back after a quick break, I need to talk about the greatest player in probably my lifetime so far, at least career start to finish. We got to take a dive and talk about the accomplishments that Mr. Albert Pujols just achieved the other night. He deserves some recognition, so we're going to give it to him here on the GSMC Baseball Podcast.
This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
Well, when it comes to just a long, tenured guy that has been at the top of baseball for a long time, even though I agree, his numbers have fallen off recently, for sure, in the last few years. But Albert Pujols, I just am amazed by watching him continue to climb these big numbers. We don't get the pleasure of seeing some of these guys reach for the massive offensive milestones in our lives. And Pujols starting all the way back in 2001. Now, just a little background for me. I am from Wisconsin, okay? I've been around the Brewers most of my life. I'm a Red Sox fan by trade. That's a long story, a different story in itself, how we got there. But since being around here, seeing a lot of Brewers games, seeing the heyday of Albert Pujols, man, this guy was incredible. And I'm sure a lot of people in the National League Central were pretty happy when they saw him leave St. Louis. But his numbers, taking the chance to actually step back and look at his numbers over his career was a joy to do today. It really is. Now, obviously, if you have 660 plus home runs and all the RBIs that he has in his career, for sure, it makes sense. Yeah, it's going to be some pretty darn good numbers to see. But it was fun. All the way back in 2001, his first season in the majors, batting .329, 37 home runs, and 130 RBIs. The guy came in with a bang. And his time in St. Louis was just flat out dominant from 2001 to 2011. I mean, the home run totals, 37, 34, 43, 46, 41, 49, 32, 37, 47, 42, 37. I mean, that consistency over a 10-year period, incredible. But then you throw on top of it his batting averages, 329, 314, 359, 331, 330, 331 again, 327, 357, 327, 312, and then 299 in his last season. It wasn't until his 10th year with the St. Louis Cardinals that he batted under 300, and it was by 1 percentage point. 1 percentage point. His career batting average is sitting at 299 right now, and that's just because he hasn't sniffed 300 for quite some time. 285 his first year with the Angels, then 272, but he'd been below that, and he's been below 250 most of the time in the recent years. But the thing is, even when you take that into account, even though when you take all of that into account, batting average numbers are down, but there's still some power numbers that are there. His first year with the Angels, 30 home runs, 105 RBIs. Second year, limited to just 99 games, still 17 home runs, 40 RBIs. 2014, 28 home runs, 105 RBIs, 40 home runs. In 2015, 95. So I think a lot of people look back at this Angels contract and they might think, oh, it was a flop, this 10-year contract. But his numbers weren't that bad when you look at the offensive production, especially considering the way baseball's played today. You have so many guys that are swinging for the fences. They'd rather get the home run than the single or anything. It's home run or bust. he was given production. Even after that 40 home run season in 2015, 31 home runs, 119 RBIs. 119 RBIs in 2016, 23 home runs, 101 RBIs in 2017. Then the slowdown happened in 2018. 117 games, so limited games again. 19 home runs, 64 RBIs, not bad. Played 131 last year, 23 home runs, and 93 RBIs. There is still production there in Pujols. It's still happening. He's gonna keep playing. You got to imagine. I don't see him slowing down. He's gonna probably stay with an American League team unless if the DH carries over to the National League consistently moving forward. We'll have to see if that happens for sure. But he's gonna keep going. And in all reality, I'm one that falls victim to this too. I thought he really was falling off with the Angels. That whole contract was a mess. But when you look at the numbers now in perspective, taking a step back, it really wasn't that bad. And he ends with some incredible, incredible career numbers. Like I said, 299 batting average before, 378 on base percentage, 547 slugging, OPS career of 925. That's career 925, and he hasn't been over 1,000 since 2010. It just doesn't get much better than St. Louis Cardinals Albert Pujols. That's the way. Postseason, the one shame in his contract is he's only had 1 year in the postseason with the Angels. I mean, obviously they were expecting him to be a big part of that offense, clicking and many, many postseason appearances. That hasn't happened. But you can also talk about the fact that Mike Trout has been there. They just signed Rendon. They're trying to put together a lot of the offense, and they aren't making the postseason period with a lot of this. I mean, he was in the postseason 2001, 2002 with St. Louis, 2004 through 2006, then 2009, 2011. So he's had quite a few. And even his postseason numbers, they have something to be like, wow, this is incredible. Especially 2004, 6 home runs, 14 RBIs, batted .414 in the 2004 postseason. This guy was just great. And you're happy to see him. You don't hear many bad stories about Albert Pujols. I don't think you hear any bad stories about him, period. And it's just, you're happy for the guy. When you look at what just happened, it took him between home runs 22 days to hit number 660. That was to tie Willie Mays for 5th all-time on the list. Then just luckily 5 days later, he didn't have to wait as long. Blasted number 661 Friday night. And then just because he can, and it's Albert Pujols, and he's an exciting player, he throws out 662 to keep things rolling. And a funny story that was talked about, this was an exchange between him and Willie Mays as he passed him. Albert Pujols actually had told that Willie Mays sent him an email after he hit 660 on Sunday, and how he was expecting to hear from him again once he passed him. Pujols said that he sent me an email and said, "What took you so long?" And they really got to reminisce about how special it really was. And Pujols also, he has a respect for the history of the game, something you love to see for someone who's been around for so long. Even though Willie Mays was way before his time of playing, he talks about how special it is. And he talks about how special it was on the field, off the field. And Pujols just greatly respects what this is moving forward. And so I really hope to see him continue to climb. I really do. Now, there's going to be quite a bit to do to get there. Sitting right now at 662, like we said, he needs another 34 home runs to pass A-Rod. Now, we'll see what he gets for the rest of the season, but the LA Angels, they're going to be out of this postseason. They're not going to be playing. So, the end of this regular season, that'll be it. He moves on. And I seriously have to question, I wonder, does a short season like this hurt Albert Pujols in the long run because of age? Or is it going to help him in the sense that there's not as much wear and tear and he's going to come back maybe a little more rested for next season? It's going to be something that we're going to see for a lot of careers. And I could question this going really both ways. And I would think that he's going to be okay moving forward. But we'll see what ends up happening with him and his contract and everything. Now, he is signed into 2021, $30 million base salary, becomes an unrestricted free agent at the age of 42. And I genuinely think if he wants to play, he will have no trouble finding someone to give him a contract, maybe even a reunion of some sorts with the Cardinals. But I'm looking at this big picture and I think about everything that's happened this season. And here's why I think we're going to have no problem getting him back into the game. The idea of a player reaching for major milestones is something that sells tickets. It's going to sell tickets, and you cannot argue that. In 2 seasons, this is obviously very optimistic thinking, but I'm hoping the whole COVID thing is kind of toned down. And if that's the case, teams are going to be wanting to make revenue anywhere they can. So why wouldn't any team just be like, hey, if Albert Pujols is struggling to find someone and we think that we're not going to be a great team and we have a, potential spot for him, why wouldn't we take the risk of just signing him and letting him go through the whole chasing the record thing and sell tickets and push it and be huge with our team? A good example of this that I can remember, Trevor Hoffman was doing a lot of career saves later in his career for the Milwaukee Brewers. It was an exciting watch. People were tuning in every time that he was coming in for a save. It was something that the fans liked to go for. Even if the teams weren't absolutely amazing some years, Trevor Hoffman being there to get a save, well, we're chasing milestones, we're going for all-time things. This is something exciting to watch, no matter how bad his numbers were. Now, it's different from like Barry Bonds when he was making his run at the end, 2007. I mean, he was still batting about 270. Had the 28 home run season before he called it quits. But we could still see that from Pujols. We really could. So 6 home runs so far in 35 games. 35 games. So we're going to say we just times that obviously 5 times 30 times 5, 150. Obviously, to get the 5 in there, it's going to be a little bit over. But he could have been close to another 30 home run season. He could have. Another 30 home run season. So we give him another 24 home runs on the year. And then we're talking about going into next season how he's chasing Alex Rodriguez to start the year. It's all going to be up to Pujols what he wants to do. He's got that one more season under contract. It's there for him. Afterwards, how much is he going to go? I find it very hard to believe that he's got another 100 in his career. I mean, that's potentially 4 more full seasons. Be playing into 44 years old. But I really shouldn't count anybody out at this point. There's amazing, incredible things that can happen, but I don't think that's going to happen for sure. But when we look at the career leaders, is it possible to get into 3rd place, past Babe Ruth, get up above 714? I don't think that's going to be a crazy spot for him to end up, for him to land. That's for sure. I think there's definitely a chance that for the home run leaders, we could see him get there. We could see him get there for sure. And I mean, there's other things that he's probably chasing, considering as well. It's really what he is looking for to end his career. Maybe he's comfortable with where he is. Maybe he thinks that everything that he's done so far is good enough for him. But Albert Pujols, heck of a career. He's even got quite a big jump to catch up to Babe Ruth, the Babe Ruth number, even though some people don't consider him second all time. If he's chasing Hank Aaron, well, he needs roughly about another 200 RBIs, which maybe that one's the more reasonable one for him. Maybe he's thinking he can get more RBIs than home runs. Really hard to say. Really hard to say. It's going to be a team giving him the opportunity outside of next year, him getting enough playing time. It's going to be a balancing act for what he is hoping to achieve in his career, but I hope he gets the opportunity. It has been so fun in this shortened season when there was so much question, the game's being packed in, the action's been great. There's been a lot of great baseball. We've seen some dominant performances, and now we're throwing in a guy chasing an all-time career milestone. The 2020 MLB season's starting to look pretty dang good. And I want us to have more games. But I don't think many people were expecting this season to turn out as good as it did. I really don't. And it's just fun to look back and see how far we've come, and we'll see what happens in the postseason. Maybe this 16 teams is going to be great. I'm questioning that. Maybe it'll just be perfect. So we're going to have to talk about it. That's for sure. We'll definitely reevaluate towards the end of the playoffs, but that's just kind of a short dive on what Albert Pujols has done in his career, what he just accomplished. Kudos to that guy. He deserves the applause. He has done some amazing things. Like I said, might be the best player that I've seen in my lifetime so far, full career. There might be others that get there that show they were just as dominant, but man, what Pujols has done, incredible. So we're going to take a quick break, and then we got to come back and we got to talk about what our playoff picture looks like right now because, hey, just like between every podcast we talk about it, the movement has happened. So take a quick break, come back. We're going to talk playoffs here on the GSMC Baseball Podcast.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Well, it was fun to talk about Albert Pujols and the big-time career accomplishments, the milestones that he's reaching. That was a blast. Definitely fun to look into. But we have some other things that we need to get to. We need to get to talking about these teams and the playoff picture that is very, very, very quickly, finally, to becoming at least confirmed. All right, our 1 to 8 for every single league, the National League and the American League. There's a lot of movement that could still be happening, mainly between, I would say, the seeding, but still a lot can be changed, and we need to be talking about this because most of these teams are getting to be above that 50-game mark, which means, hey, the postseason is almost here. What we would be looking at right now as of last night, so this recording as of September 19th, Saturday, looking at the standings this morning, we would have the Tampa Bay Rays playing the Blue Jays. That would be our 1-8 matchup. We would then be sitting here looking at White Sox, Indians. I like the excitement of that. A's, Astros would be our 3-6. So far, those three matchups staying in their divisions. Rays, Blue Jays, White Sox, Indians, A's, Astros. I'm also sitting here again, just praying, hoping and praying that this stays to be the case. I want this to happen, okay? These division ones are going to be fun, okay? And then lastly, Twins, Yankees, 5-4 matchup. I find this to be very comedic as well because no matter what, the Twins just can't avoid the Yankees in the postseason. But hey, maybe this is finally the year to get over the hump. And remember, because if you're someone that's looking at just solely records and wondering, well, hey, why are the Blue Jays the 8th seed? Remember, the top 3 seeds, 1, 2, 3, those teams that win their division, then goes by record between those 3, 4, 5, 6. is the second place finishers. So we would have the Blue Jays as a wild card 8 team and the Indians as the wild card 7 team, both a lower seed than the Astros at the moment because the Astros finished second in their division. Now, that's going to be something that I think in the future, if we stick with these 8 teams, will have to be changed. Will for sure have to be changed because I could definitely see some of these teams going, hey, when we are like right now a full 3 games up, like the Indians are a full 3 games up on the Astros, maybe we'd rather be playing the A's than we would be playing the White Sox. So it's maneuvering there that's going to need to happen going forward if we stick with these expanded playoffs, expanded postseason formats. That's just one issue we're seeing right now. But that's the way it sits. So that's our American League. Our National League. Right now, the Reds are in from the National League Central as the 8th seed. They would be playing the number 1 Dodgers, who are looking like they're finally making a little bit of ground between them and the Padres. Phillies, Cubs being 7-2, Cardinals, Braves 6-3, Marlins, Padres 5-4. And this one as well is where we need to really sit and question the division seeding. So now, in a normal season, though, too, I would be sitting here going, it seems very unfair that the Padres would be considered a wild card team. In a normal season, they would be on the outside looking in just because the Dodgers are that better. They have the second best record in the National League. And they're going to be getting a 4 seed going against the 5 seed Marlins, which maybe is not a very awful matchup for them. We'll see. But in a normal season, we would be talking about how, man, this doesn't seem very fair. They're just going to get the home field in the 1-game playoff, but hey, it's a crazy season. It's a crazy season. We also didn't expect this. Now, teams that have actually clinched their playoffs, clinched to get in, the Dodgers, they are the one and solo team to have made it. They clinched that berth on Wednesday. They were joined by the Tampa Bay Rays and the Chicago White Sox on Thursday. And then on Friday, the Athletics, they were able to clinch as well. When we're looking at who will possibly be next, here again is where that thing gets a little crazy. The Padres have a magic number of 1 to clinch their postseason berth, their first postseason since 2006. So that's where things are looking as of right now. When we look forward at where our teams that at least have playoff hopes moving forward, we're going to talk about all the teams that aren't technically eliminated yet. We have some teams that aren't eliminated just yet, but also the teams that we think are going to make it. Where are they sitting? What are some big series that are coming up for them? So staying in that American League East, the Rays, sitting atop of the entire American League right now. They have 2 games at Baltimore, 3 games at the Mets. Not a very hard schedule for a team looking to be the top seed in the American League. They definitely have to take advantage of these moving forward. Baltimore team that has for sure fallen off. They're 2-8 in their last 10. This sits very well for the Rays as they're trying to fight off a White Sox team that's a half game back and the Oakland A's who are 1.5 games back for that number 1 overall seed. The Yankees as well in the American League East, they sit at the 2nd spot. They have 2 games at Boston. We talked about how this series, yes, it's a good matchup for them. But with this rivalry, don't be surprised if Boston can try to play spoilers. They tried last night for sure as the Yankees won 6-5 over Boston, but it had to go 12 innings to settle it. And then 4 games at Toronto, which will end up being massive, massive games if the Yankees drop any and the Blue Jays keep winning. And staying on those Blue Jays, they were just swept in a doubleheader by the Phillies. So they've maybe got to do what they can to just hold on in their playoffs. They want to rise up maybe a couple spots, not see the Rays in the first round. They have 2 more games at Philadelphia and then those 4 games at the Yankees. So that AL East is going to be fun to watch at the end, especially if those Yankees and Blue Jays games end up meaning quite a bit when it comes down to the final stretch. American League Central, the White Sox, they have 2 games at Cincinnati, 4 games at Cleveland. they can't afford to lose anything either. That was a big loss they had last night against the Reds to push them back in the American League chase to be the top seed. They need to pick up those games, and then a Cleveland team that's going to be fighting to push their way up as well. The Twins sitting right behind them in the division when we're talking between the American League Central. The Twins are 3 games back. They have 2 games at the Chicago Cubs and then 2 games versus Detroit coming their way in the future. And then the Indians, 2 at Detroit, 4 versus the Chicago White Sox. And the Indians are 5 games back. And it'll be hard to make up 5 games. It will be. But they're on a 2-game win streak right now. 2-8 in their last 10 is a problem. They've been struggling. But they're on a 2-game win streak right now, trying to turn some things around going into a series that could be a big one against the White Sox. The American League West, the Athletics are standing atop. They got 2 games against San Francisco, 3 at the Dodgers. They're holding a 7-game lead. It looks like they have the West locked up. Where the West gets interesting, the Astros, 25-26, 4-6 in their last 10. They're only 3 games up on the Mariners. Now, here's the thing. The Mariners aren't doing themselves any favors either. So they're 3-7 in their last 10 with 4 games losing streak going right now. But these 2 teams meet up. After 2 games with the Diamondbacks for the Astros and 2 games for the Mariners versus the Padres, a 3-game set between the Astros and Mariners to help decide a little bit of ground when it comes to who's going to be making the postseason or not. I said this before on the last pod, I'll say it again. I don't think anybody would have ever thought they'd be talking about the Nationals and potentially the Astros both missing the postseason when we expand the postseason this year. I find that absolutely crazy. 2 World Series teams just gone like that. But hey, it's in the conversation now. We're talking about it. Looking at the National League, the Braves sitting atop right now of the National League East. Nice, comfortable 3.5-game lead for the moment. They have 2 games at the Mets and then 4 games versus Miami, which could help them just settle in a division title. Those are going to end up being big games. Marlins themselves, before that 4-game stretch with Atlanta, they have 3 more with the Nationals. Those are must wins. They just split their doubleheader with the Nationals yesterday, so that would have been Friday night. 3.5 behind the Braves, like we said. Half-game lead ahead of the Phillies. And that's for the second guaranteed spot, which after you get out of that second guaranteed spot, there's nothing really guaranteed for these National League teams. So that's something that the Marlins are trying so hard to hold on to. And I just am blown away with the Marlins. They have a winning record. Obviously, they're not massively over 500, 26-24. But they have a minus run differential of 16 this year. They're getting outscored this year with their winning record. So we'll see. They're questionable. Luckily for the Marlins, though, they hold the tiebreaker over the Phillies. They won the season series 7-3. That is huge for them. The Phillies took 2 big wins over the Blue Jays yesterday, Friday night. They have 2 more against Toronto and then 4 at Washington. If they get some help from the Braves, that's right, the Phillies are asking the Braves to give them some help. They get to have a 4-game stretch with the Washington Nationals, which might end up turning the tide for them a little bit. Could be big, big games. And we have to talk about the Mets because they're not out of it yet. The Mets are 2.5 games behind the Reds for the 8th and final playoff spot. The Reds own the tiebreaker over the Mets, but they are still in this. 2 games versus Atlanta, then 3 versus Tampa Bay. That's the biggest problem they have. Their schedule is tough to end the year. So we talked about Jacob deGrom before. They really are going to want to see him come back and make his next start. The National League Central, a lot going on here as well. Right now, the Cubs, 5.5 games up over the Cardinals and the Reds. So they have a nice lead. 2 games versus Minnesota, and then the ability to lock this thing in, I feel like, with 4 games at Pittsburgh. They take most of those games. It looks like the Central and a playoff spot fully locked up for the Cubs. Behind them is where things are the craziest. The Reds, 26-26. 2 games coming against the White Sox, then 3 big games against the Milwaukee Brewers, who we'll get to in a second. St. Louis holds the tiebreaker with Cincinnati. They won that season series 6-4. Right now, the Reds have the tiebreaker of the Brewers leading 4-3. So that's where those 3 games are going to be huge, because if they lose that series, get swept, or lose 2-1, it's going to get interesting. The Cardinals, they just swept the doubleheader versus the Pirates. They have 2 more against Pittsburgh, and then they get 3 against Kansas City. Between these 3 teams, their schedule is the nicest for sure going forward. And then the Brewers, well, they just picked up a win against the Royals. 2 more against Kansas City, and then those 3 games against Cincinnati, like we said. This is tight. The Reds and the Cardinals currently tied for second. The Brewers 1 game back. 1 game behind them for that guaranteed second playoff spot. That's what these 3 teams are going to be fighting for. We'll see. You almost have to go into this final week hoping to get the second spot and not even worrying about the wild card. The wild card just is going to happen because there's going to be too much craziness there that you can't really control when you're looking across other divisions. So fight for that second spot. Hope for the best if you can win some games. The National League West, the Dodgers we talked about, they're locked in. They have a nice lead over the Padres now of 4 games. I imagine they're hoping they're going to hold on to that. 2 at Colorado, 3 versus Oakland. Not the easiest schedule, but you got to imagine they're going to take some there. Padres, 2 at Seattle, 2 versus the Angels coming up. If the Dodgers slip it all, this is a nice stretch for them to make up some games. We'll see what happens there. The Giants and Rockies are the 2 other teams that are still in this thing. The Giants are currently tied with the Reds with a .500 record, but do not have a tiebreaker over Cincinnati. That's why Cincinnati, as we talked about, would be the 8th spot right now. The Giants have 2 games, at Oakland, then 4 versus Colorado. So there's going to be some fighting there. They just need to flat out win games because as of right now, the Reds and Brewers both have tiebreaker edges over the Giants. The Giants trail their season series versus the Rockies, which is games coming up. They just need to flat out win. Avoid any confusion with this. And the Rockies sitting at 22-28. They are 3 games back. They are still in this. They trail the Reds by 3 games for the 8th spot. Problem is for them as well, the Reds hold the tiebreaker over the Rockies. 3 games versus the Dodgers, 3 at San Francisco. We're probably going to be talking very shortly how the Rockies are out of this. And not how they have fallen. It's just a bummer for them. So that's what we're looking at right now. We feel pretty confident on a lot of these teams. I would say, even though we have holdout hope for the Mariners, there's something still there. I think we got our 8 pretty locked in for the American League. The National League, a lot can happen still. A lot can happen. I didn't expect it to be this tight, this crazy. I mean, we go 4 deep in the West, 4 deep in the Central, and 4 deep in the East. There's really only 3 teams that are fully eliminated that we know they aren't going to make it. So we'll see. Baseball's crazy. Crazy things happen. That's for sure. So that's what we got for our playoff picture. We're going to take one last quick break, and then we're going to come back with, well, some of these teams that are eliminated. Some of them that are on the outside looking in. What do they have to look forward to next year? And maybe what's some things they could do to boost their team? We're going to talk about it here on the GSMC Baseball Podcast on the GSMC Podcast Network.
Want to know the latest in soccer? Then listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Soccer Podcast. From MLS, the World Cup, and the Premier League, we've got you covered. The latest updates, the hottest matches, and news on the league's top players. It's the Golden State Media Concepts Soccer Podcast.
David Beckham scores the goal to take England all the way to the World Cup finals.
Listen now.
Unfortunately for some of our teams, their seasons are going to be coming to an end. But that doesn't mean that we can't be looking ahead for some of them. That's for sure. So we wanted to take a chance to take a step back and actually talk about, well, some of these teams, what does their future entail moving forward? And that's a look at, well, what's their farm system like, potentially with what's on their roster a little bit. And at the moment, we have, quite a few teams that are sitting on the outside with only 16 that are going to make the postseason. Well, I shouldn't say only 16 because that's over half the league. That means just under half the league is looking on the outside. And there's still some with hope to make the postseason. But the teams that we have on the outside as of right now that I would say, American League, Baltimore Orioles, even though they have a chance, Boston Red Sox, Detroit Tigers, Kansas City Royals, Angels, and Rangers. In the National League, it's looking as of right now, just the Nationals, Pirates, and Diamondbacks. We could throw a couple others in there, but since they're still, they have a chance to still make the postseason, let's keep them out of the conversation. So what do some of these teams have to look for going forward? So we're going to stay with the American League right away. The Baltimore Orioles. Hey, if you're a fan of the Baltimore Orioles this season, I think you need to have your head up for sure. When it came to midseason farm rankings, the Orioles fell at about 8th. They were 13th. Their farm system is looking promising. They've been picking towards the top of the draft for quite a few years in a row, and that certainly helped boost things for them. They've added also some top players in the 2020 draft and added some good depth at trade deadline deals. So they've been doing a good job building their farm system up. Some of their top prospects, Adley Rutschman, the catcher, number 4 for overall, Grayson Rodriguez, Heston Kjerstad in the outfield. They have some guys there. But also when we look at their roster, they have this little core of players about 25 to 27. And they got some good performance. With these guys, they might have the chance to make another little bump up. The problem that they have is they're playing in an American League East that is loaded. The Rays are really good. They have an outstanding farm system. The Yankees are really good. The Blue Jays are starting to get their young guys up and playing. And we may be talking about a Red Sox resurgence if they can fix one thing, and we'll get to that in a little bit. But they have players. Pedro Severino at catcher, another catcher for them. At 27 years old, he's been giving some good moments to them. Infielders, Hanser Alberto, he's 27 years old. He's been doing some great things for the team. And, Anthony Santander, who was awesome for them this year when it came to bringing in runs, hitting home runs. He was awesome. Renudo Nunez, Rio Ruiz, they have this collection of players that makes you think, okay, the Orioles could make a jump. They could get better. Like we said, though, their biggest issue that they have really has to deal with, well, they're playing in what could be one of the deepest and toughest divisions in baseball next season, especially when we consider a Red Sox team that's right back there behind it. Now, we know what the Red Sox are. It's very easy to say. They can score runs. They have the ability to score runs. They have the offense, the depth. It's there. Okay? They have some guys potentially coming up, but the core of Devers, Bogarts, Verdugo, it's looking like JD Martinez will be back next year. Kind of questioned about the leaving. They have offensive talent. They can put up runs. Can they get people out and keep runs off the board? Now, we knew coming into the season we weren't going to have Chris Sale, but also the last time we saw Sale, he wasn't really the best that we knew him to be, the top-notch, top rotation, number one guy. Is he going to come back healthy and be that person again? We're not sure. Evolve up and down for the team this year. We'll see what it is. Martin Perez hasn't been awful when you look at his ERA, 3.88. WHIP is 1.26. Like to get that down a little bit. Way too many walks. 44 strikeouts to 27 walks. That can't be happening. That's something that definitely needs to be fixed. But this team needs to figure out its pitching, and they need to figure it out in the worst way. A lot of work to be done on that side. And just kind of knowing Boston, they might spend this offseason. We'll see. Who knows? It's going to be an interesting offseason. You thought the trade deadline we were worried about? Wait till we see this offseason. Anything could really happen. So we'll see when it comes down to how this is going to fall apart. But the American League East has a chance to be turned into a division that's very, very tough next year with 5 teams that might compete. 5 teams that literally might compete. So we'll see what happens there. Moving on down to the American League Central, another just loaded. The American League is tough. It is tough, man. The Tigers and the Royals are on the outside. The Royals, I'm not quite 100% sure what they're going to be yet. They've been showing some fight later in the season, but I'm still concerned what's all going to happen. What they're going to put together. Next year might be another rebuild year. They might move on from some of the guys that have been there in a long time, and Alex Gordon, Salvador Perez, move some pieces and fully embrace the rebuild. I mean, when we look at their farm system too, they've been trying to acquire. They're 10th in farm system. They were 17th at the preseason rank, and we'll see. They could surprise us a little bit, but I think there's still another year from until we really know what the plan is going forward. Now, the Tigers, though, on the other hand, they showed some great moments as well, and they have a list of young pitchers and young players that are starting to play, which makes you wonder if this team is going to be closer to some sort of at least movement into being more competitive in the Central. The Indians have the pitching, Twins have hitting offense, White Sox have hitting offense. So the Tigers are also kind of falling behind with the Indians. They're trying to put together quite a few pitchers, and they have some young guys that are coming up. That's some excitement for them. Run production, they'll need a little bit more. We'll see what they do to try to get there. I am excited about this Tigers team with the potential of some of their starting pitching moving forward. I mean, Casey Mize is going to be an interesting player. He's going to be something to watch. Now, we also can talk about Spencer Torkelson, their last number 1 overall pick too. Now, he's going to be a little bit of time away. It's looking like these Tigers players are going to start coming up. Now, next year might not be the year. They might have to have a year of growth with each other, but that's okay. They're in the same boat as the Royals. Give me another year. Let's see what they are, because the 3 teams in front of them are pretty dang good, and they might be pretty dang good in the next year as well. So it's still that rebuild, but at least we can say the Tigers took a positive step forward. They lost a lot of games last season. They were in the playoff hunt for quite a stretch. I see this as a positive step forward for them. They just got to hope to have another positive step forward next season. The Angels and the Rangers, on opposite sides of the spectrum of what they really need to do. Rangers, go get yourself some offense. Angels, go get yourself some pitching. The American League West could be interesting next year. This Mariners team is on the outside a little bit too. I'm going to keep them up because their playoff hopes are still alive. They have some young, fun talent on that team. The Angels have spent on offense. It's time to get the pitching to help. Your lineup looks loaded. It looks loaded, but if you can't keep runs off the board, what does it matter? The Rangers, you had some pitching. They have just fallen apart. There is way too much stress on their pitching to do anything because they cannot score runs. They just cannot score runs. 183 on the season. The only other team that's near that is the Pittsburgh Pirates. Just sad, okay? That needs to be fixed. Get some runs on the board, help your team out, help your pitching. I wonder how much we would have been talking about how great Lance Lynn is if we just had some sort of production for him. That's what it has to be. So that's what we got kind of for the American League. Looking at the National League, 3 teams here. 3 teams. The Washington Nationals. Now, the American League East, along with these other 2, have been very competitive. Obviously, with the Mets, Phillies, Marlins, Braves, all fighting for the playoffs. But the Nationals, this is just a World Series hangover for them, but a mixture of injuries as well. They have not been able to put their full healthy team out there. They have not had their full healthy pitching staff. They're not the team they were last year. Yes, they lost Rendon. That's obviously a big, big hit to their team. A big hit. But they had production from Soto, Trey Turner. Guys were hitting the ball. They'll be able to weather that storm if they just have a healthy squad put together. I will not be surprised if they go out and try to make one move somewhere, try to get another great bat, but they have two top-notch guys. It's all about filling in some gaps from there, getting some other guys to produce from there, and you're going to be okay. Get your starting pitching back, get everyone back and healthy. Scherzer is up to that 55 innings. He has not been his best self, but he's been kind of battling some injuries throughout the year. Corbin, not far behind him. Their stats are very similar to each other. ERA is very comparable. WHIP, very comparable. The only difference is Scherzer obviously gets more strikeouts every year. But after those two guys, who's our quality starters? That's what we're looking for. And they just didn't have it this year. If they can get back a healthy Strasburg and get back to having three great starters, you're going to have a new perspective and different perspective on this team. I imagine a lot of people after their offseason are going to say, hey, the Nationals are going to be a bounce-back team, even though we shouldn't even consider them that way, because if they were healthy all year, we might be talking about them differently. So I don't even want to give them the idea of being a bounce-back team at all, but it's going to be a conversation had. The Pittsburgh Pirates, they have a long rebuild, it feels, ahead of them. I don't know what the positives. They're middle of the pack when it comes to players in their farm system. Okay, they're just average there. Some guys could get up and they could start producing. It could happen. They got some other young guys. They're going to have to make decisions. Do we want to trade some players? Do we want to trade some players to get some more depth in our farm system, or do we think these really are the guys moving forward? I think they're coming to a big decision with Josh Bell. Okay, 28 years old. Are you going to keep him? Do you think you can move him and get some players for him? That's the one person they're going to have to think about. Collin Moran at 27 is another player they're going to have to think about. They have some names that some contending teams are going to like, but they just don't have enough to push themselves over the hump. So it might be time to commit to some trades, see what you can get, and the pitching, it's not good for them. I mean, their top guys, their top inning guys, just going down the list. Here's their top 5 ERAs for the guys eating the most innings this year. 6.70, 6.58, 5.03, 4.04, 4.79. Okay, that needs to get down, that needs to get lower. They need some answers at pitching. I mean, they made the move to go get Chris Archer, and Archer has been not here. So, I mean, we don't know what they're going to be. We don't know what they're going to be. They're going to make some serious changes, and that's fine for them as well. When you look at the division ahead of them, the Cubs are going to be good. We know that. The Cardinals are a steady team. The Reds have gone all in on their roster. They've been spending money. We'll see if they spend to keep their pitching this offseason. And the Brewers, they have talent. But they need to make some moves to solidify their team as well. So the rebuild time might not be a bad one for the Pirates, because if they do it well and they do it, efficiently, they might climb quicker than they think to get up here in the Central. And then the National League West, the Arizona Diamondbacks. This team, the heartbreak of what they could have been. Their farm system, well, when we're looking at it, falls at 9. 9 out of the MLB. Not bad, in the top third. Okay. Some of these guys have already been up getting some service time. We're looking at one for sure. Dalton Varsho is one guy who's been up. He was called up early in the year. He's getting some playing time. But they're going to have some decisions to make as well. We thought their offense was going to be pretty good this year. It's been a little more stagnant. They have names there, though, that can help them. Christian Walker having an okay season for him. David Peralta doing okay. I mean, Starling Marte was traded away. Ketel Marte, though, staying around. He's been all right for them as well. They have an okay core that they need to work with. But if they think they need to go in the rebuild in a loaded division as well, don't be surprised if they make some moves this offseason. A lot of those guys that have been performing well for them are close to that 30 age outside of Marte. Marte being younger, he's 26. We could see them trying to make some moves. They also have to figure out what they're going to do for pitching. Zach Gallen has been good for them, a bright spot. Slipping a little bit of it recently, but still really good. Really good. Madison Bumgarner, you gave him that big contract. Is that going to end up being a very, very poor decision? They traded away Robbie Ray. We'll see. They have a lot of decisions to make this offseason. They're the team that I definitely would say, I don't know which way they want to go. Do they think they have enough? Do they think their pitching rebounds next season? If it doesn't, they're going to be big-time sellers in the next trade market. They really are. They're very much in question what they want to do moving forward. So that's what we're looking at for the Arizona Diamondbacks. It's some of these teams we can be optimistic about. We really can. I can be optimistic about the Orioles. I can be optimistic about the Red Sox. That might be a little bit too much of my fanhood. The Tigers, I see what they have going. I can even get optimistic about the Angels. I understand what they have there. But other teams, Royals, Rangers, I don't know where you're going. I can be optimistic about the Nationals, Pirates, Diamondbacks. Some big-time decisions need to be made. This is a nice offseason for them to reevaluate and go, okay, what do we really need going forward? Who can stay? Who can we sell? What can we get to help our farm system? And it's never too early to start thinking about this. I think a lot of these teams are probably already looking at it. What is going to matter for us moving forward? So we'll see what they end up doing. So that's going to be it for looking at our teams that are on the outside looking in. What could we think about them moving forward? I have to have this in my mind because my Red Sox, obviously, like I said, they got me concerned moving forward with pitching, and I'm sure a lot of other fan bases feel the same way looking at their teams this year, as we have some that just know, hey, we're on to next year, So that's going to be it for me today on the GSMC Baseball Podcast and the GSMC Podcast Network. I want to thank you again, your host, Collin Manley, for listening. It means a great deal, and if you have a chance, make sure you follow us on all of our social media websites, Twitter. We're doing a lot of our talking on there. Good follow on Twitter. You can also leave a review. Leave a nice positive review. That helps out a lot. Maybe you have some ideas what your team should be doing this offseason to make sure you get back on track. Or maybe you have some things that you think about your team that you already have inside in your farm system on the roster that you're feeling positive about. I don't know. Leave a review. Would love to hear from you guys. Thanks again for listening here on the GSMC Baseball Podcast.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Baseball Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.